Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing an Infernity deck. So you guys have been requesting this deck like crazy on the channel, and I'm really excited to say I think I finally figured out the exact numbers for each card for you guys to see exactly how this deck can be at peak performance. I am really excited to show you guys this deck because this deck is absolutely insane, especially the new Infernity Doom Archfiend. This card is really good and really helps out what the deck is trying to do. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below because you got some awesome rewards for you guys for getting your name description for every single video, getting signed cards in the mail, or even getting your requested deck profile every single month to your patron along with test hand. And definitely comment down below and tell me if you're surprised that Infernity just keeps getting more support, because I thought that Konami was actually going to try and bury this deck and never give it more support because of all the problems that this deck had where people were setting the monsters in the back row, and it was just insane. If you play Infernities, don't do that. You're not cool. Let's go ahead and see what we're doing in this deck. So first off, we're going to be playing a single copy of Infernity Archfiend. So Infernity Archfiend is limited to 1. This card is insanely good. What it does is while you have no cards in your hand, this entire deck functions around not having cards in your hand. What this card does is when you have no cards in your hand and you draw this card, you can reveal it, special summon it. And when this card is special summoned, if you have no cards in your hand, then you get to add any Infernity card from your deck to your hand, which is usually going to be your Infernity Barrier or Break. We then play a single copy of Infernity Patriarch. Infernity Patriarch is really neat because if this card is the only card in your hand, you can special summon it, and then it also has the ability that while you have no cards in your hand, if an Infernity monster you control will be destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can banish this card instead, which is a really good effect just to be able to protect your other Infernity monsters. You play a single copy of Stygian Street Patrol. If this card's in your graveyard, then you can banish it to special summon a Fiend monster with 2,000 or less attack from your hand, which is the big effect about this card. We then play, which is usually our copy of Archfiend. We then play 2 copies of Necromancer. Necromancer is really good because if this card is on your field, you change it, or when it's normal summon, you change it to defense position, and then while you have no cards in your hand, this card gains the following effect: that you can special summon an Infernity monster from your graveyard, which is always going to be your copy of your Archfiend, which is the really cool thing about this deck, because basically what you're trying to do is get your Archfiend in the graveyard, use Necromancer to bring it back, and then loop back around and keep looping and looping and looping to get your cards on your side of the field that you want to get the searches off your copy of your Archfiend. We then play 3 of the new Infernity Wildcat. I like 3 in the deck. I've seen people play 1, I've seen people play 2, I've seen me play 3. I like 3. What this card does is you can special summon this card by sending one other Infernity monster from your hand to the graveyard. You can only special summon Infernity Wildcat once per turn this way, and then while you have no cards in your hand, you can banish one Infernity monster from your graveyard and increase or decrease his levels by 1 until the end phase of the turn, which is really helpful just to be able to get you additional level modulation on your side of the field. I really, really like that effect, to be able to give you that additional level modulation. You can bump it down to 2 if you want to, because I will say this deck is a 50 card deck. My particular build is 50 cards to be able to play around with this. So this card is really neat to play as a 3-of, because it helps you send cards from your hand to the graveyard, like your Conjurer or your Avenger, or a card that you need in the graveyard that you can bring back, but it's stuck in your hand. We play a single copy, speaking of Conjurer, we're playing a single copy of Conjurer. While this card's in, you have no cards in your hand, monster your opponent control lose 800 attack. That effect does not matter. The big effect of this card is that if this card's in your graveyard, you can special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field if you don't have any cards in your hand, which is pretty good to be able to just special summon a level 3 monster from the graveyard. 1 copy of Avenger, essentially level 2 or level 1 tuner, that's all it does, because you can use this plus a Necromancer plus an Archfiend to go into an 8. So you go 1, 3, which is 4, 4 plus 4 is 8. So you go into 100 Eyes Dragon, or you go into Infernity, or Void Ogre Dragon, or you go into a copy of Borreload Savage Dragon. And then for the last 3 Infernity monsters, which I know Stygian Street Patrol doesn't count, but he might as well, you play 3 copies of Infernity Mirage. That this card has the ability that it can be tributed on your side of the field to select 2 Infernitities in your graveyard and special summon those monsters. This card is probably the whole reason that the deck even works at this point, because of Infernity Archfiend being at 1, and it is really insane. This card is literally probably the craziest card in the entire deck, and I love it. It was actually the reason I wanted to pick this deck up, was because of this card. So that's it for the Infernities and Stygian Street Patrol plus Stygian Street Patrol. Let's get into the level 3 monsters, because this deck primarily focuses on level 3 monsters now. So, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Tour Guide of the Underworld. Tour Guide is really good in this deck because Tour Guide, basically you normal summon it to your side of the field, and it lets you special summon from your deck a level 3 Fiend monster, which is super helpful. You're not going to usually summon it from the hand, but sometimes there will be instances where you will summon from the hand. We play 3 copies of Fiendish Shriner Warrior. Fiendish Shriner Warrior, I know, it's looking like BA, isn't it? What this card does is, when it's sent to the graveyard, you get to send another Fiend monster from your deck to the graveyard, which can be quite helpful in this deck to help you get the exact Fiend monster you need in the graveyard, like getting your copy of Archfiend into the graveyard as quickly as possible, so then you can special summon it back from the graveyard. And also protects all your Fiend monsters being destroyed by battle or by card effect, except itself. We play a single copy of Archfiend Eris. This card lets you search a Archfiend monster from your deck to your hand if this card is sent from the field or sent to the graveyard because of a card effect or being destroyed by battle. So it's really good to be able to search your Archfiend, Infernity Archfiend from your deck to your hand. You play a single copy of Edgem Sabers because it can put a card back on the top of your deck and then special summon it from the graveyard. Really good card and helps out a lot in this deck because you just get that added bonus of like getting the cards out of your hand, which is what's important. You play 3 copies of Psychic Wheelator because it is a level 3 tuner monster that can instantly summon itself to your side of the field for free. And it is a psychic monster as well, so it comes in quite handy in the deck for being a tuner monster as well. We play 2 copies of Psychic Tracker. Psychic Tracker is another level 3 monster that can just special summon itself from your hand. It's not a tuner monster, but it can come in handy to summon out cards like your copy of Infernity Doom Archfiend. It can just be an overall really good card in the main deck. You play 3 copies of Gillosaurus. You want to usually go first in this deck. So Gillosaurus is really good because you can special summon this card from your hand for free. But if your opponent has a monster in their graveyard, they do get to target that monster in their graveyard and special summon it to their side of the field. So really good card, but you have to usually use it on the first turn because you want to just throw it out as quickly as possible so you don't give your opponent an advantage. Because if they don't have a monster in their graveyard, they don't get to special summon, but you do. We then play a single copy of Danger Jackalope because it's a level 3, and a single copy of Danger Tatsunoko. We don't play any other dangers. You just play these 2 because basically you're trying to use them as level 3 materials to go into a lot of different plays. And also what's really neat about these cards is they can help you kind of empty your hand a little bit as well. Then we play for the last 3 cards, we play 3 copies of Parallel Xyz. You might be thinking, why are you playing that? Well, the reason you're actually playing Parallel Xyz in this deck is because it helps you make rank 4s in the deck or use it as a link material to be able to go into a lot of different things like Yugioh, because Yugioh is going to be the main card that you're going to be using in this deck to dig through the deck to get the exact card you need. So the copy of Parallel Xyz helps out a lot with that, giving you an additional name on your side of the field and getting a card out of the deck, which is super nice. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. I know that is a lot, and I mean a lot of monster cards. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Monster Reborn, an extra copy of Monster Reborn, and another copy of Monster Reborn, and another copy of Monster Reborn, essentially. What these do is basically all 3 of these, or all 4 of these, are Monster Reborn. Monster Reborn is the standard. The 0 max is a Monster Reborn for Infernity cards. If you don't have a copy of a card in your hand, you don't have anything in your hand. World Legacy Succession essentially lets you revive a monster to your side of the field to a link zone. And then Infernity Launcher is a searchable Monster Reborn for 2 Infernity monsters. So this card's really good. Now, the only interesting card that you might see is 0 max that you don't know about if you're not playing Infernities or you're not familiar with Infernities. What this card does is if you know cards in your hand, you can select 1 Infernity monster in your graveyard, special summon it, and then destroy all monsters on the field with attack lower than the special summon monster, and you cannot conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this card effect. So this card's really good because you can special summon an Infernity monster to your side of the field, and then once you do, you destroy all monster opponent's side of the field or your side of the field that have less attack than that monster. Really good card. I really like playing around with 0 max. It's just a really good card overall. You play one of the new Infernity Paranoia. This card is really good because it lets you tribute a dark monster, especially an Infernity monster from your deck or graveyard with the same level but a different name, but negate its effects. And then during your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish it and then target 1 Infernity monster in your graveyard graveyard and add it back to your hand. So it's a really good one-of because it helps you get your Infernities out of the deck onto your field. 1 copy of Foolish Burial because it sends the attack card you need to the graveyard when you need it. And then 3 copies of Allure of Darkness because it helps you dig through the deck even deeper, because just about everything in the main deck, except Parallel Xyz, Gillosaurus, and a couple of the Psychic monsters, are dark. We then play 3 copies of Void Apocalypse. Void Apocalypse is a kind of a neat card in this deck because it lets you discard a card to send a Fiend monster from your deck to the graveyard, and then you get to send, which is the only big effect of this card because it's actually an Infernoid card, but this card is really good in this deck because you get to send a Fiend, you get to discard a card and then send a Fiend from your deck to the graveyard, which can be a copy of, say, Fiendish Rhino Warrior. You're getting a card out of your hand, you're getting a Fiendish Rhino Warrior in the graveyard, and then you're also thinning the deck a little bit more by sending like a copy of Archfiend to the graveyard to dig it out with one of your 4 Monster Reborns besides your 2 Necromancers, which are also 2 more Monster Reborns. So you're essentially playing 6 Monster Reborns in this 50 card deck. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Barrier and 1 copy of Break. This is very standard. What this card does is basically it negates anything if you have no cards in your hand and you control an Infernity monster. Infernity Break is if you have no cards in your hand, you can target an Infernity monster in your graveyard, and 1 card your opponent controls, banish the first, and if you do, you destroy the second. This pops something. This says no to anything. This card has actually spawned an entire phrase in the entire game, which is basically when an archetype gets a card that's a specific speed spell 3 counter trap in its archetype, a lot of people call it an Infernity Barrier. This card is insanely good and is probably one of the most iconic cards in the entire deck because it's what the entire deck searches to even function. So that's it for the main deck, guys, which is, like I said, it's 50 cards. It is a lot of cards in this deck, but you need it. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing a single copy of Infernity Doom Archfiend, which is the new awesome synchro monster. What this card does is once per turn, you get to target 1 face-up monster, 1 face-up card on the field, negate its effects until the end phase of the turn. And then if you have no cards in your hand, you can destroy it instead. And then while you have no cards in your hand, if this card battles an opponent's monster, any battle damage this card inflicts to your opponent is doubled as well. And then also a dark synchro monster that's used this card as a material to synchro summon. It can make 2 attacks during each battle phase. This card's pretty good. I like it. It helps you just do additional attacks. And if you guys haven't seen High School DxD, the really cool thing is this is the same like symbol that Rhea Scrimori has in her. Yeah, I'm a man of culture. This is the exact same thing that she has as a mark. Now go check that. We have 2 copies of 100 Eyes Dragon. 100 Eyes Dragon copies the effect of a Fiend monster that's in your graveyard by banishing it that's level 6 or lower, which is really cool. I like that effect. You're usually going to copy your effect of oh my god, Mirage. You're going to use Mirage's effect to be able to special summon back your Archfiend and your copy of Necromancer, which will then summon Avenger, which will get you another copy of a Search, which will get you another Barrier, and then you can synchro summon your second one of these if you have another copy of your Mirage in the graveyard, which will then get you an additional Search, and you just go through the loop again. We then play a single copy of Void Ogre Dragon. Void Ogre Dragon gives you an additional negation on your side of the field. You have no cards in your hand of a spell or trap. Borreload Savage, easy to make in this deck. Basically, you're going for level 8 synchro monsters in this deck anyways, and it's really easy to put a Yugioh on this card and get it really big, all the way up to 44 with 4 negates on it, which is pretty good. 1 copy of Herald of the Arclight. This card is really easy to go into as well, especially with your level 3 engine that you're going in this deck with a level 1 tuner. It's really easy to go into. And then for the Xyz monsters, we're playing a single copy of number 60 because you can detach 2 materials, draw 2, discard 1, or be able to double the attack of a monster or special summon a monster back from your graveyard. Helps out a lot, especially if you don't have a card in your hand. You overlay into this, and then you immediately, with 2 parallel Xyz, and then bring back your copy of Necromancer, which then brings back your Archfiend, which then gets you a Search, which then you just snowball from there and go into a Yugioh if you have another monster on your side of the field. We then play a single copy of Levinar the Sea Dragon because you play so many level 3s in the deck. And you can sometimes actually benefit yourself by banishing your Archfiend to be able to bring it back to loop through again, especially if your opponent banishes the Archfiend. You can just use this card to be able to bring it back, and you get a Search, so it punishes your opponent for banishing it. Yugioh, because it helps you dig through the deck so easily. You play 2 copies of it. If you use 3 or 4 monsters that have different names, you could draw 4 and then put 3 back. And then also it has the ability that lets you special summon a monster from your hand, which is super nice if you put 3 materials in it. But you're always going to want to put 4 into this. Same thing with Appaloosa. Appaloosa gives you an additional negate. You can actually get up to I've gotten as many as 8 negates on the field, with 4 being in Appaloosa, 3 being in the barriers, and then 1 being in a Borreload Savage or a Void Ogre. So I've gotten 8 negates on field before in this deck, which is ridiculous. It is, I can't believe it. Like, this deck is ridiculously good when it goes off. 1 copy of Needle Fiber because you play tuners in the deck and it's really easy to link climb with this card. Union Carrier because it just helps you get the cards out of your deck that you need. IP Masquerena because you can go into your copy of Appaloosa on the next turn, especially with multiple monsters on your side of the field, which is usually how I end. I usually end with IP and then like 3 monsters on my side of the field, including at least 1 Infernity monster. And then I'll go into Appaloosa during my opponent's turn with 3 barriers set, which is usually what I end on. And then a single copy of Cherubini, because Cherubini just helps out a lot with sending level 3s from your deck to the graveyard and helps you link climb. So that's it for the deck, guys. I know it is a lot. This deck is insane. Probably one of the hardest decks in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! To learn. I'm not even gonna lie. It probably is, in my opinion, the hardest deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! To learn. If you can learn Infernity, you can learn any deck in the entire game. I promise you, you can. This is like master level Yu-Gi-Oh! Learning this deck. And if you learn it, I will give you a heart. Comment down below. I will give you a heart if you say you can fluently play Infernity. I don't care if you're telling the truth or lying. It's awesome. So, anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell news to become part of the notification squad, and definitely tell me what you think of this deck down in the comments down below. This deck is super fun to play around with, and I highly recommend it to you guys, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.